It's now time for The Journal, WBGU-TV's award-winning public affairs program, with your host, Steve Kendall. This is where your community matters. Local people, local issues.
Hello and welcome to The Journal. I'm Steve Kendall. We now have access to news and information any number of ways these days. And in our area, one of those new ways is through online BG Independent News, which you can find online at bgindependentmedia.org. Joining us to talk about their organization, this new media, are two veteran journalists, David Dupont and Jan Larsen Mclaughlin. Well, thank you both for being here.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, and
Yes.
BG Independent News is that new media we talk about. It's an online service. It's news about the area, but talk a little bit about how that came about, because both of you come from strong traditional print journalistic backgrounds.
Right.
So talk about making that transition and how this online media service came about.
Well, it's, I guess, it's in a way it started sort of with me. As you said, I come from a strong print background. I also, besides doing newspaper work, I've done a lot of freelancing, writing about music, jazz in particular. And one day, walking home from work, got to thinking. I started adding up in my head. And I realized I had published over 1 million words.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
I owned the rights to none of them.
To none of them. Mm-hmm.
And it got me thinking, and I was sort of at a point, kids were gone, I was at a point of trying something new, so I decided to leave the newspaper, the local newspaper, and sort of go off on my own and explore that digital media. And then I'll let Jan pick, that was like November 2015.
Right.
When I left the paper, people were saying, well, I had developed developed the arts coverage here, and people
Sure.
said, well, how are we going to find out about this? Who's going to review our shows? And I said, oh, I started a site on Medium, on medium.com, and
okay.
was publishing there a few times a week. It was doing mostly arts coverage, and then Jan became available.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
Through through sort of.
Through the usual ways that media works these days,
Yes.
in a lot of ways. So,
Yes,
yeah,
it
yeah.
was something of a cause célèbre for a while.
Right.
And after she was saying, well, what am I going to do? What am I?
Right. This was the only thing I knew how to do. This is the only thing I've ever wanted to do.
Sure.
So, and there aren't a whole lot of options. So we
Right.
pretty much had to create our own.
Right. And we met with folks, Elizabeth and John. Robert Zibble from Zibble Media, and they were had been toying with the idea of doing sort of a local news information website, and we said, okay, well, here we are. Yeah. And one of there are these formats out there, but one of the things that often they lack is talent, for a better word. People who can produce it. And here we had two. In Jan, one of the best journalists in the area, and
Sure.
and myself, one of the journalists in the area.
But it is a good point, because anybody can get online and put anything on there.
Right.
But applying good journalistic skills and background and experience and understanding what journalism is and what it isn't,
Right.
and adapting that to the way people now access things is important, because anybody can write anything and put it online.
Right.
Writing something that actually is accurate, pertinent, and means something is somewhat alien to some people. So
Right.
it's
And
a
we
different-
came into
yeah.
it with some credibility.
With all of that, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So
yeah.
that helped us out.
Yeah. And you make a good point that you mentioned, that, and typically too with journalists, you're in it because you love doing it. You're in it for a passionate reason, as well as everything else. But that drives why you want to stay involved in it and why you want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right, and it's almost, in a sense, we're becoming almost akin to writers, as in fiction writers, poets, in that we have more independence. We have to find our own channels of distribution, and that's the niche we pushed in the market. Is that our stories, we aim to be thorough, entertaining, more in depth, whether that's an arts story or whether it's a school board story. You know, Jan has done a phenomenal job on the local school, issue, and going to all
all those committee meetings,
and coming out. And I don't know how she does it. You know, I've done it for many years, and to be able to just spell it out, so that if you have not gone to those committee meetings, if somehow you found something better to do on that night, you can read her stories, and as I do, and say, wow, yeah, okay, I understand what's going on.
Yeah, and that's the difference between someone who just puts something online and people who know how to put things online that actually inform and make it understandable, make it easy for people to understand what went on there. And that school whole issue with Bowling Green City Schools is important because it's very complex. First of all, it talks about money, and everybody gets emotional about money.
Right.
Either positively or negatively, they get excited about it. But there are so many options there, so many different variations, so many ideas. And when you look at the coverage of those stories with all of these different committees, with dozens of people involved, being able to lay that out so that people can understand what exactly is going on versus what people think they heard, or they talk to somebody else and, well, you know, they're doing this. That's an important thing, and that's the skill you were talking about, Jan.
And I think that's one of the things that is so important to us, is that our goal is it's to inform people of what's going on in their community, and is this who you want to be, or do you want to be someone else? And neither one of us want to tell the community what to do, but just to tell them where they are and what their options are going forward. And with the school issue, it is overwhelming at times, and but that's our job.
Yeah, and it's important because the one thing too that with online, just as print used to be and probably is to some degree still, you do have that opportunity to be a much more detailed than broadcast media can be, because there it's a 30 seconds on the story. You're able to lay out all of that information, and gosh knows there's a ton of it about that issue, almost any issue. The devil's always in the details. That's where the real story is. And as you said, you're able to kind of capture that and make it as if you weren't there, you feel like you were, because you understand exactly what went on and how it came down and who was interested in what part of it. When you approach stories like that, I mean, not all of them are that intensely heavy feeling, because you cover a wide range of activities there. And talk a little about your philosophy about what you believe is, why you think certain stories are important, how you make that differentiation between, yeah, we're going to cover this, or we're not going to cover that. Is there a method to that?
Probably not a.
Okay.
Is it an interesting story? Is it something people will be interested in? And there's stuff people are is interested in, but we're not going there.
Okay.
But it's basically it's an interest. We're trying to tell the story of this community, and that's one of our defining features is that we're really pretty focused on sort of Bowling Green, what affects Bowling Green, so that expands to, like Jan had a story this morning on on Monday morning, is on the North Baltimore, a new development down there at the CSX facility. That certainly is outside of Bowling Green, but it's
impactful too.
Right.
And
we've done some on the Amazon warehouse project or distribution center. That's outside, but people here are going to be going to those jobs, and the fact that they're drawing jobs also will affect companies here looking for jobs. I expand the arts to an extent. It gets hard because there's a lot going on here. And so we're telling the story of this community, and there are two of us, and limited time, but boy, we try to pack in as much as possible. I think I think when we started, one of the things we worried, and I remember before the first summer getting together and saying, well, what are we going to do this summer? Everything's going to dry up, and
nothing will be going on.
And I filled a whole a long yellow legal pad full of ideas of things I could do, and I said, well, I think we can get through. We probably didn't get to half of those.
Sure.
Or I didn't get to half of those. Those were mine. And there is so much going on, and it's our notebooks are always full.
There's always one more thing. When we come back, one thing I want to touch on a little bit is, because online, of course, usually means you open that up and allow people to comment on things. We'll talk a little about how you handle that, because that's a pretty volatile situation sometimes. Right. We'll be back in just a moment. We're talking with the folks from the BG Independent News here on the Journal on WBGU-TV. Thank you for staying with us here on the Journal. Our guests are David Dupont and Jan Larsen Mclaughlin from BG Independent News. One of the other areas, and of course, new media, social media being out there, is newspapers, traditional media, and online media usually have situations where they open up their stories to comments from citizens, or they allow people to write little editorials. You guys have that, your community voices section in your online area. How do you manage that? How did you think about, should we or shouldn't we, when we decide that you're going to do it? How do you control that, or how do you keep it focused? Because these days people will write just about anything online. I mean, it just seems to be a human nature thing.
I'll speak to the community voices part.
All right.
Well, I think it's because we just the two of us. We knew it would be difficult for us to cover everything that people were sending in to us. So we thought we'll just let them speak for themselves. So that segment there is primarily just word for word what people send to us, basically.
Okay.
And we make that clear, saying that it was submitted by this group.
And we don't alter it, we don't edit it, what you see is what you got.
Basically.
Well, we do some small.
A little bit, okay.
I do some small tweaking.
Okay, all right. Okay.
And that's the community voices part. We also have opinion, which are like letters to the editor. But as far as comments on Facebook, I'll let David handle that.
Just in terms of community opinion, though, one of the things we are looking for people when they do community opinion to provide us with a complete statement of their belief. What we do not want in community opinion is the sort of the back and forth that you get in a newspaper.
Which is,
somebody say, letter this week, next week, a short letter, which you totally. We want complete, a complete statement of thought, and we don't get a lot of community opinion. That sort of back and forth happens on Facebook.
In a lot
Right. I will say, right now, Facebook is really, I consider it a necessary evil. It's great for getting our stories out. It's really essential for getting our stories out. It is the social media. We have tried other things. Twitter does not drive traffic to our stories the way Facebook does.
Okay.
And that's where people comment. I have a very light hand on moderating that, though. Honestly, there is a line at which I say this is our feed, this is our Facebook page. I'm not working to let you say that hateful thing.
Sure.
So there are there are things. I know when I was working at the newspaper, I was involved in the comments, and there was a time when people could comment on the paper site, and basically the paper made a decision that they were going to move that to Facebook, because then Facebook's taking care of making sure who's commenting, because there were just a lot of fake names. And you had no idea, if you remember those days. It was like you had no idea who was commenting. There's still that problem on Facebook. There are still fake accounts out there. We try to weed them out, but it's hard. You complain to Facebook and they don't really do anything.
Well, and when people can be anonymous, which is the difficulty here, they would say things they wouldn't say if their name was attached to them, or they wouldn't say it to. You get that back and forth, like, oh yeah, well you're this, and it becomes a personal thing versus. And it's always interesting as you watch those chains, as those threads go on, and by the time you're 10 or 12 in, the topic's been completely lost. It's like, you're an idiot. Well, you're more an idiot than I am. It's like, what's the point of all this? So that's a tough thing to manage and not get into that sort of personality conflict versus topic discussion.
Right, but on the other hand, I think there are some interesting. There are interesting threads. People, going back and forth. It certainly shows how divided people are. There are people who will read things and they will come up with exactly the opposite impression of what someone else would come up with. And you know, people on all sides, all shades of the ideological spectrum have that problem.
Right.
But it's, you know, it is, and that's part of what what media does is spark that debate. I think certainly in the school we get that. Certainly in the school discussion we get a lot of people expressing what they you know what they feel should be done, and I think you know, you see some movement sometimes.
Or city issues like the plastic bag thing that's going to be discussed again this week. That'll be a
large discussion because it's one of those sort of, it's funny how a discussion about plastic bags, you get sort of personally attached with people, but it does somehow. Because we all, well, it's like, and it hasn't happened up here, but you have those areas where you got the plastic versus the paper straw thing, which huge amounts of documentation has been generated about why do we have to use paper straws. But it shows you that, but the good news is, I guess, as you guys have said, is that information's out there. People can express their opinions provided they keep it, you know, somewhat focused and organized and legitimate, and then that's good because more involvement is usually a good thing for democracy and journalism and government and all of that too. It's just kind of managing it so it stays in that area. Do you guys get a lot of tips on stories? Do people send you things and say, hey, here's a great story you should really, I mean, you probably get a lot more of those than you could ever handle. I know that we do. Get ideas for things, and we do as many as we can, but it's impossible to do that with everything. Yeah,
and a lot of times they're feature-y kind of stories. Like Tuesday, I'll have a story on the middle school cheerleaders, for the first time ever, cheered for girls basketball. They always cheer for boys basketball. So, you know, it's not a really newsworthy story, but it's interesting. And, you know, things are changing like that. But that was a tip from a mom of a cheerleader. So.
Yeah. Well, and those are the kind of things that, normally, and that's not something you're going to see on TV news. It's not. It falls through the cracks because of a time factor. But those are things that are important. It's about people, and I guess that's a big part of what you do here. How it impacts people, or it's about people and how people can see other experience through the experiences of the people you write about. When you look at the different categories, how do you make that decision though in terms of saying, this will be important to the people that we believe are our online readers, viewers, whatever you want to call that? How do you, when you have to draw the line, what usually is the criteria? It says, no, you have to weigh the difference between this story and this story, because you don't have unlimited space online, and you have to be pretty focused. So how does that editorial decision come down? Do the two of you sit down and sort that out?
It's more of a time issue, not a space issue. But we're pretty, I mean, we pretty much, every once in a while we'll bounce an idea back and forth. Is this worth covering? But otherwise, we make our own decisions, and I think if we think that this matters to the community or is of interest to people, or sometimes even if we're interested and we think people ought to know this. Like David said, we don't really have any firm lines. It's a lot of times can we get there? Is this something we have time to cover?
And get it. And when you rotate stories, and when you look at what is your sort of like deadline to say, okay, we're going to put this story up. It has to be up by this time of the day.
We have no deadlines.
You have no deadlines. Really, none at all. That's wow. That is new media. No deadlines.
I like to make sure there's something fresh
up in the morning.
Every morning. Okay. Right. No.
And we aim for two main feature stories, at least two a day. Often, if Jan's real busy, we'll have three. It's we get them up when we can based on our based on our schedule, which is, yes, it is new media, and it's why traditional print media really has a surprisingly hard time doing online media.
Sure. Oh yeah, because they're used to the presses roll at 3 a.m. or at midnight, and then we're done until the next cycle. There is no next cycle. It's a constant.
And it's when you trying to make that transition. It's really surprisingly difficult. The drawback for us is we work a lot.
That's what I said. Well, let's come back. Let's talk about what that's like, because there is no 9 to 5. There is no whatever in this.
Well, there are 9 to 5s, and they come 3 or 4 times a day. It seems.
Okay. Well, we'll be back with more with the folks from BG Independent News in just a moment here on the Journal. Thanks for staying with us here on the Journal. We're talking with David Dupont and Jan Larsen Mclaughlin from BG Independent News. That last segment, we talked about the fact that, and you mentioned it, there are no deadlines because news generation and news delivery used to be on schedules, whether it was broadcast or it was print or whatever. There were times when stories had to be in, you ran them through the cycle, and then you waited for the next, then your next deadline was 24 hours later or 6 hours later. But with digital media and the business you guys are in, there is no deadline situation.
Right.
I mean, the stories, and as you said, you guys are out a lot, not just between this time and this time, because news doesn't just take place at a fixed time anymore.
Right, and it's the deadline is, it's not, I don't want to make it seem like, because it absolutely is not the case that we're, la-di-da, we'll get it up.
No, not at all, no.
It's, when there is news happening, if it's important, we're going to get it up there as soon as possible. And we shoot for those, having those stories up, and we have had main feature stories. We have posted stories we started in January 2016. We have had stories up every day except for the 3 Christmases and I think the 2. Did we take the 2 New Years? And the most recent 2 New Years off that we did not post original stuff, but we posted very close. And I have to say, Jan sort of snuck on Christmas. All of a sudden, late Christmas, there was a story out there. I think, right? I think so. I think there was one there. So we, there are no vacations. So there are 2 things I say we are bad at.
Okay.
We have not mastered. One is taking vacations. It's hard, and we take vacations with our laptops, with our notebooks. Early, and we'll tell you a secret here. Early in the first week in August, because of a confusion, I went off with my wife to celebrate our 40th anniversary, and we went to Isle Royale National Park, where we had honeymooned. And you don't bring your laptop there.
Yeah, you're sort of out. You're off the grid there. Yeah.
So I actually scheduled for stories to appear while I was there. Jan were you in California? She was in California. Brought her notebook as she always does and posted from California. The Zibbles, who run the website, they were in New England.
There
was nobody. There was nobody home at BG Independent, but I don't think anybody noticed.
But and I guess, and that's the good news about that, because you don't necessarily you don't have a fixed position, which was the old way that things happened. You went to your desk and you did the story, and then you sent it off to copy, and the editors looked at it and said, okay, it's good to go. I guess that's the good news and the bad news. You can be doing that from wherever you are, but
the bad news is
you could be doing it from wherever you are and whatever you're doing.
So that's the other thing we're not good at is asking for money. Because we do support ourselves through advertising, and we've had some good support for that advertising, and then we have people who are longtime sponsors. For example, Sandy Rowland has been with us since the beginning, and also support donations. And you can go, there's
a membership area you can go to and
membership is not right. You're basically sponsoring us. It's
but we both came from a profession where there was supposed to be a line between
and there still is,
side
and the journalistic side.
We were supposed to be almost unaware of where the money was coming from, because it wasn't supposed to influence our decisions, and I think it still doesn't with us. We're professional enough, though my mother-in-law is a major donor of ours, and I do treat her rather nicely because of that.
But that's just not about the money. That's just But it is a good point, because you don't want your journalism to be driven by who's funding it, and of course, people are always going to accuse any media of that, because they say, well, gee, you're not going to say, well, and one of the classics is you look at one of the big online sports networks. I mean, they get a lot of money from sports leagues they cover. So there was always that, well, did they back away from that story because they don't want to offend the big donor? But you're right, journalism is journalism, business is business, and for the most part, most media operations that do a good job of keeping those separate, despite what the perception might be from some people. But that's a good point, because you guys rely on people to sponsor you and things like that, and, and you have to balance that. You have to hit that spot.
And people realize, I mean, we've been in this business a long enough time. People know us, and they know that they know our ethics, and they know that we're not going to be influenced by things like that.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
But we even, when the first year, we actually did not take political ads. The first year, and then people people asked us, candidates said, we want to advertise, and we changed our mind. Because they, in a way, it's money.
Sure.
And you know, we are a
in the end, you are for-profit.
Yes, we are not.
Exactly.
I think there is maybe some people who think we're non-profit. We are. We do have to support ourselves in this.
Sure. And
the other thing is, if it's a service, if people feel that they want, you know, their ads on it, well, that's a kudo to us.
That speaks to the quality and the credibility of the journalistic pieces you put up there, because they believe. Yeah, they believe in what you're doing. They believe that they wouldn't risk their product on an illegitimate operation, basically. So your credibility, going back years, and of course what you've generated online demonstrates that. But it is funny though, because there is that line of, and you guys are now, you're both the business side and the journalistic side. So, but you're keeping those separate. And that's what's important. So good. Well, sure. Just a few seconds left.
Sorry, the Zibbles handle the. Primarily the money side of it.
The advertising.
Right.
And I handle the business. I am the managing partner is my official legal term for what I do. And I've just finished my taxes like everybody else.
Oh, you're finished. Good for you.
Well, I'm finished to get it to the accountant for now.
Well, Jan, Larsen, Mclaughlin, and David Dupont, thank you so much. It's BG Independent News. You can find them online at bgindependentmedia.org, and it's that new digital media, another voice for Bowling Green, an opportunity to hear what's going on, see what's going on, and participate in what's going on. So we appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for providing another independent voice in the news here in Bowling Green. It's
Thanks
very
for having us.
Thanks.
And you can check us out at WBGU.org, and of course every Thursday night here on the Journal on WBGU-TV Public Television. We'll see you again next time.